أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي بمحمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن عدوهم. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, The soul's trust in this world is one of the greatest delusions. The soul's trust in this world is one of the greatest delusions. قال الإمام علي عليه السلام: سكون النفس إلى الدنيا من أعظم الغرور. سكون النفس إلى الدنيا من أعظم الغرور. With Islamic laws, we reach to issue number 1060. If after raising his head from sajda, a person realizes that he has done so before. What does that mean? That he has done sajda before. After he raises his head from sajda, he realizes that he has done sajda before the completion of the dhikr of sajda. His prayer is in order. Why? Because he has completed the sajda, number one, and number two, he hasn't left the dhikr intentionally. He hasn't left the dhikr intentionally. It just happened like that. He forgets the dhikr and he raises his head from sajda, and then he remembers, he recollects that he did not perform dhikr. Okay, now, what's going on? Am I going to repeat the sajda? My salah is void? No. Your salah is valid, and continue your salah. Issue number 1061. If at the time of uttering dhikr of sajda, that's Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih, a person intentionally lifts one of his 7 limbs, intentionally, one of his 7 limbs, either the 2 palms, either one of the palms, one of his toes, and so on, his salah will be void. His salah will be void. Look, if intentionally before the completion lift the one of his 7 limbs from the ground, his salah will be void. But if he lifts the limbs other than the forehead, when he is not reciting anything and then places them back again, there will be no harm. While he is in sajda, he lifts, for example, one of his hand from the ground, but he hasn't recite what? But he hasn't recite the dhikr of sajda, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih. I'm not talking about the forehead. I'm talking about the other, either the palms, the toes, the knees. There is no harm. It doesn't matter. Since he hasn't recite any of the dhikr, it doesn't matter. There is no harm. Unless that movement renders his body unsteady. Except if he moves, for example, his knee, one of his knees, or both of his knees from the ground, which makes his body is what? Unsteady. Unsteady. In this case, his salah is what? His salah is void. His salah is void. In which case, salah will be void. When he is not reciting anything and then places them back again, there will be no harm, unless that movement renders his body unsteady. In which case that he removes one of his limbs without changing or renders his body unsteady, his salah will be void. If his body becomes unsteady, his salah will be void. Is this understood, or you need to ask a question? Is it understood? You understand it? You understand it? Are you sure? Okay. Issue number 1062. If a person raises his forehead from the ground by mistake, this person raises his head or his forehead from the ground by mistake, not intentionally, before the completion of the dhikr, before the completion of the dhikr of sajda. He should not place it on the ground again. Why? Because we consider this act as what? As one sajda. One sajda. Even if he does not complete the whole dhikr, maybe he recites only half of the dhikr, he needs not to go back for sajda. So he should not place it on the ground again. He should treat it as one sajda. However, if he raises other parts of the body, not his forehead, other parts of his what? Of his body from the ground by mistake, he should place them back on the ground and utter the dhikr. How about, this is, we talked about the forehead. About the forehead. If he raises his forehead from sajda and he hasn't completed the recitation of the dhikr, in this case he doesn't need to go back for sajda. Alright. How about if he raises one of the other limbs, just like his palm, his toes? In this case, he should put them back and recite the dhikr again. Issue number 1063. After the dhikr of the first sajda, after the dhikr of the first sajda, that's it, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdah, is completed, one should sit still. The body is steady. One should sit still and the body is steady. Okay? And then perform sajda again. And then perform sajda again. He cannot perform another sajda or the second sajda while his body is not what? Is not steady or is not still. Two things. He has to still and his body should be steady. In this, after this, he can perform the other sajda. Issue number 1064. The place where a person places his forehead for sajda should not be higher than 4 joint fingers. The place where a person put or places his forehead on it, just like a turba, it shouldn't be more than 4 joint fingers. Maybe 4 or less, that will be acceptable. More than 4 joint fingers compared to where he places his knees. If his knees right here and he wants to perform sajda, his sajda shouldn't be higher, that his forehead shouldn't be higher, more than 4 joint fingers, more than what? More than the level of his knees. More than the level of his knees. That means the level of his forehead when he is performing sajda should be lesser than 4 joint fingers. Lesser than 4 joint fingers. The place where a person places his forehead for sajda should not be higher than 4 joint fingers compared to where he places his knees and the tips of the toes. Should be on the same level. As as a matter of obligatory precaution, the place of his forehead should not be more than 4 joint fingers lower or higher than the place where he stands. In both cases, neither more than the places where he stands, nor he is lower than the places where he stands, that his forehead should be. It should be lesser than 4 joint fingers to perform his sajda. That his forehead should be lesser than 4 joint fingers, either higher or lower than the level of his where he is standing. Issue number 1065. On sloping ground, even if the incline is not very evident. On sloping ground. Sloping, you know what's the meaning of sloping? Munhadar. On sloping ground, even if the incline is not very evident, if the difference in height between the place of one's forehead and the place of his knees and toes is more than 4 closed fingers, his prayer is problematic. Look again. On sloping ground, بالأرض المنحدرة, even if the incline is not very evident, حتى لو كان الانحناء is very evident, if the difference in height between the place of one's forehead and the place of his knees and toes is more than 4 closed fingers, his prayer is problematic. That means to say, based on obligatory precaution, it is not valid. Why? Because it is this ground or this earth is a slope. Issue number 1066. If a person places his forehead by mistake on a thing which is higher than the span of 4 joint fingers compared to the place where his knees and the toes are, and if it is so high that it should not look like a normal sajda, he should raise his head and place on a thing which is not as high. Look, it does not look like a normal sajda from the beginning. If a person places his forehead by mistake, not intentionally, by mistake, on a thing. Look, by mistake. Now let's see, is Sayyid Sistani accept by mistake, or he is going to correct it? If he is going to correct it, that means he does not accept it. If a person places his forehead by mistake on a thing which is higher than the span of 4 joint fingers compared to the place where his knees and the toes are, and it is so high that it does not look like a normal sajda. The other thing that it does not clear or it does not look like a normal sajda, he should raise his head and place on a thing. So there is a permission. It is permissible to raise his head and to place it on a thing, which is not as high. So it is allowed in this case. which is allowed to raise his head and place it on a thing which is not more than 4 joint fingers. And if the height does not change the appearance of the sajda, he said by mistake he put his head on a high or on a thing which is more than 4 joint fingers, but by mistake, not intentionally, by mistake. And this does not change what? Does not change the attitude of the salah, does not change the mood of the salah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And if the high does not change the appearance of the sajda and his attention is drawn to it after completing the obligatory dhikr, and his attention is drawn to it after completing the obligatory dhikr, he should raise his head and may complete the prayer. Now, when he discovered or when he realizes that he put his forehead on a high and this high is more than 4 joint fingers, after he raises his head from the place, this place, and this number 1. Number 2, this high does not change the appearance or the mood of the salah. In this case, what is the solution? The solution is his salah is valid and he should continue. He should continue his salah. But if his attention is drawn to it before the obligatory dhikr, now he pay attention that he puts his forehead on a place higher than, by mistake, higher than 4 joint fingers before reciting the dhikr. He should gradually push or move his forehead to a lower level, not to raise his head. Push or move. Push or move his head from the higher place to put it on the lower place and recite the obligatory dhikr. After that, he recite the obligatory dhikr, Subhan Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih. And if that is not possible, he cannot do that. He should recite the obligatory dhikr and complete his prayer. If he cannot move or push his head away from this high, I mean the 4 joint fingers or more, why he cannot? He cannot because all the area or all the ground in front of him is what? Is high. So what he should do now? He just recite the dhikr, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih, and to continue in his salah. Doesn't matter. It would not be necessary for him to repeat the prayer. Issue number 1067. Excuse me. Issue number 1067. It is necessary that there should be nothing between the forehead of the person offering prayer and the thing on which he offers sajda. Here I'd like to talk about it. Actually, we almost pray on turba. There shouldn't be a separation or a curtain or something prevent the forehead from touching From touching the turba. Sometimes the turba itself, its color tend to black or its color turned to greasy. Sometimes it has some grease on it from the body of the people, from the forehead of the people. Or in this case, we have to remove this, because this is a separation. This separates our forehead from what? From the turba. It is very important. It is very important. It is necessary that there should be nothing between the forehead of the person offering prayer and the thing on which he offers sajda. If the turba is so dirty that the forehead does not reach the turba itself, the sajda is void. The sajda is void. Pay attention to it. There is no harm. There is no harm when, if there is nothing separate the turba from the forehead. There is no harm. There is no harm. Now, the sajda is void, but if only the color of turba has changed, there is no harm. If only the color of turba has been changed, due to what? If you notice, sometimes when your forehead is still wet, your forehead is still wet because of what? Because of the wetness of ablution, and you put your forehead on the turba. You put your forehead on the turba. In this case, it doesn't matter. It is only the color has been changed. I mean, there is no substances between the turba and your forehead. Just the color has been changed. Issue number 1068. In sajda, a person offering prayer. In sajda, a person offering prayer should place his two palms on the ground in a state of helplessness. In a state of helplessness. There will be no harm in placing the back of the hands on the ground. There will be no harm if one placing the back of the hand on the ground. And if even this is not possible, definitely for reason. And if this is not possible, he should, on the basis of precaution, place the wrists of the hands on the ground. If he cannot, for example, put his palms on the ground for a reason, maybe they get hurt or burnt or something like that, he can use what? He can use the back of his hands. If he cannot, if their hands has been cut, he can put what? He can put wrists on the ground. Issue number 1069. In sajda, a person should place his two big toes on the ground. His big toes on the ground. But it is not necessary to place the tips of the toes. But it is not. Imagine these are my toes. My toes, or my toe of my left leg. It is necessary to put my leg, to put my toes on the ground. Okay. It is not necessary to put the tip. This is the tip. It is not necessary to put the tip. Maybe it is necessary to put what? The back of the toe. You see? In such, the person should place his two big toes on the ground, but it is not necessary to place the tips of the toes. If he places the outer or the inner parts of the toes, the outer or the inner, the outer or the inner, not the tip, the outer or the inner. I think you can see this. This is the tip. This is the tip. Okay? It is not necessary only to put the tip. If you cannot, you can put the outer of the tip, the outer of the big toes. For example, this is the ground. Okay? This is the tip. The normal thing is to put the tip of the big toes. If you cannot, put the outer side of the tip or the inner side of the tip on the ground. Huh? Yeah, that will be sufficient. That will be suffice. But it is not necessary to place the tips of the toes. If he places the outer or the inner parts of the toes, it will be proper. But if he places instead of the toes, he places what? He places other smaller toes. He places other smaller toes on the ground. All right? Or the outer part of his feet. The smaller toes or the outer part of his feet. Or if his big toes does not rest on the ground. Why? Because of the long nails. Due to very long nails, his salah will be void. This is a very important issue. His salah will be void. And if a person does not follow this rule due to ignorance or carelessness, he has to pray again. He has to pray again. Look, if you know or if you do not know, because of ignorance, because of you are what? Carelessness. In both cases, in your salah, if you put the small toes instead of what? Instead of big toes, whether from the outer part of their smaller toes or the inner parts of the smaller toes or the outer parts of your feet, your salah will be void. Your salah will be void. If you did this before, you should repeat your salah, whether you know or you do not know. For that, so much people, when they will come at doomsday, the angels will tell them that you do not have salah, you do not pray in your life, in your universe, in alam al-dunya. Issue number 1070. If a part of the big toe is what is cut off, one should place the remaining part of it on the ground. If a part of my big toe is cut off, I should what? I should the other part on the ground. I should put the other part on the ground. And if nothing of it, if nothing of the toe has been in its place, has remained, if nothing has remained or what has remained is too short, he should, on the basis of a precaution, place the other toes on the ground. But if he has no toes at all, he should place on the ground whatever part of the food has remained. Is this clear? Is it clear? You understand it, inshallah? Okay. Issue number 1071. If a person performs sajda in an unusual manner, like if he rests his chest and stomach on the ground or stretches his feet, his salah will be correct and valid. Again, if a person performs sajda in unusual manner, like what? Like if he rests his chest and stomach on the ground or stretches his feet, his salah will be correct and valid if it still appears like a normal sajda. If it appears like normal sajda. Some people, they have big body, maybe big chest, big stomach, and when they go for sajda, their body will be on the ground. But when you look at them, they are performing what? They are performing sajda. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But if it appears more like sleeping on one's stomach, what this person, he changed the moods of salah. The appearance of salah has been demolished. Rather than a sajda, his salah will be void. His salah will be void. Yes. Issue number 172 will come next lesson. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن عنهم.